Hello everyone. In today's video we're going to be covering how to treat and manage the ends of your dock lines. So when you have your 3-lay nylon rope, what are you going to do at the end? You could either burn the ends and melt them, which is actually bad and you don't want to do that, or you could whip them or backsplice them. In today's video we're going to be showing you how to whip the ends of your lines. So whipping is simply the process of applying a thin line at the end of your dock lines, or any 3-braid line. So all you're going to be doing is wrapping it a whole bunch of times, tying it off, and you tie it in a way that it can't come unraveled. Now if you start to see your whipping coming unraveled, you want to replace it quickly, because the next step is your line actually starts fraying and coming unlaid. So it's very simple. You want to have the ends of your line taped, that way they hold together, and you're going to keep that on until the very end. Now you're simply going to lay the line on here and then start twisting it. Now it's important that when you're twisting the line around it, you want to go in a direction opposite to the lay of the rope itself. And the reason is, as the line untwists, the lay opens, right? So as the lay opens, you want the whipping to actually tighten. So it has to go in the opposite direction. If it's in the same direction as the lay opens, so will the whipping. When the line turns the other way, it's going to actually loosen the whipping, but there it's tightening the line, so no ill effects. And then when it goes this way, it's going to tighten the whipping as it unlays the line, so it still holds it together. So it's just really important to remember, you always want to go against the direction of the lay. So here we are working on the single end of the line. Now I just push my awl through it, straight through, purposefully going through the different strands. And the reason is I want it to tie together and hold it. And then we just pull that out. So pretty straightforward. So that's now through. I then wrap that up so that way it's just, tucked up in there. And then we just come up and we start wrapping against the lay. Now this is very similar to applying service, where you want to put it on with a lot of tension and no overwraps. And that's it. You're just going to put it on really tight. So I always do it so that as it comes off the end of the spool, I can actually hold the spool, and that'll help generate a lot of tension. So we're just going to do about 1 inch, and then we start tying it off. Now you can do more than 1 inch if you want, but that's just extra work. And if you have a lot of these to do, that extra work adds up really quickly. Now as for the size of the twine that you want to be using for the whipping, you want to go with the biggest small one. And what I mean by that is, the smaller the line, the more wraps you have to do and the more work you're going to be doing. So you want to go with something a little on the bigger side, but still very small. Because if it's too big, then it's going to look more like you wrapped a small rope around it instead of some serving twine. Now here I'm using FSE Rob Line. They make really good whipping. This is whipping twine size 15. So this is the one I use for these lines because it's an appropriate size for it. Now it's good to get waxed twine because it seems to hold up a bit better than unwaxed twine. So you don't want to use just any regular rope. You want to use something specifically for it. So there we have about 1 inch. I'm just going to pull off some excess here, and we'll just cut it, and we start our work. So the first step is you're actually going to open the line up just a little and pass it through. So what you're doing is you're locking the line in through the lays. So that one goes through there, and now you're going to follow the curve of the lay up, and you're going to come up. So the idea is you're going to have 2 passes on each, and they're going to go locking through the different lays of the rope, and they're going to lay in the recesses between. You can see this comes along curving, and then it goes all the way up to there. So you just want to run it through those things. Once you have this nice and tight, you can cut your tape off, and it makes your life a lot easier because now you don't have to do as many passes with the needle. So you have these 3 lines. I like to kind of part them a bit, and you're going to come between them and then go back down. So you're really separating the line with the whipping twine. So just going to come back down, and now this one comes to here and it's going to come out here. So that means you just need to unlay this line and pass it through. Now if you're whipping double braid line, you don't have to do these 3 passes business. You simply take your awl and you go through and you pop out the other side, you come back and you just wrap it around, kind of like if you're tying the end of a seizing knot. Okay, so this one came down, went under this lay, comes out, it's going to come back up, and it's going to follow the gap between the lays, and then we're just going to pull this one to the side, and this fits in there perfectly and comes down. And now it meets this guy again. So that begins our second. So it's important to pull this really tight, which is why I use a Phillips head screwdriver as a Marlin spike. You just tie a little Marlin spike hitch and you pull really tightly. Now this comes down. And then comes back up. So you can see you're pretty much just weaving this around the lays of the rope. And all you're doing is just tying everything nice and tightly here, so that way it all stays together. And then this one's going to come down. Now it's really important that when you start this, you start it with the line that goes through the rope itself to kind of like anchor it in place, that's at the bottom. You run up, and then from up here you start working your way down. And then you start this whole knot tying business from the bottom. So you want to make sure that when you finish, you've wrapped the line from top to bottom, that way your knot can go from bottom up to the top and back and forth. And the reason is, you want your final knot that we're going to be doing in just a moment to be on the bottom, to be between these 3 lays. That way the knot is tied in the middle, inside of this, where the rope's going to hold it nice and tight. Because if that knot is on this side, they're going to fray with time, and they actually get nice and soft and fluffy and won't hurt your boat. And that's actually why you don't want to melt these, is because then you're going to have a really hard block of nylon that's going to be sharp, and it can scratch and gouge your deck. So you want to leave it nice and soft and frayed, that way if it rubs on anything, it's not going to hurt anything. Now, if in this nice soft fluffy spot you have the knot runs the risk of coming untied, because it's not really held tightly. Where back here, it's locked in, it's not going anywhere. So, as you can see, our last pass, so now we have 2 passes on each of these 3 areas, ends up down here. So that's why you always want to wrap from top to bottom. That way, the side that you ended your wraps on is the side that you're going to have your knot on. So we simply come down, and we unlay this line here, and we pass this guy through. Now, I like to use an awl instead of a sail needle, and there's a very simple reason. It's got a bigger handle. You can use a needle, and if you use a needle, you can actually push things through and carry the needle in the end of the line. Where in awl, you have to be threading the needle a lot more often. But I personally find that having a handle aspect outweighs the issue of trying to rethread it all the time. Okay, now we have 2 passes on each of these 3 areas. And the end of the line, the tail comes out down here. Now right now, technically, you could just cut it off and you'll be pretty good. But there is a chance that this whipping can come unraveled at this point. So, I like to take it a step further. What you're going to do is you're going to pass the line through using the awl. You're going to pass it under these guys. And that's going to make it loop and come around. So pretty much just doing a couple loops here. Nothing too complicated, nothing too major. Now with these loops, you want to pull them down nice and tight and low to the bottom, and then you're going to pass the line onto the next one. And that little knot is going to get pulled really tight down to the bottom, and that is what's going to hold everything. And with 3 of these, 1 on each, it's not going to come unraveled. So you then just open the lay, pass it to the next one. Now that it's passed through, we're going to tie another Marlin spike hitch. And when I tighten this, that comes down, so it hides away. And now that we're over here, pass the needle through again. So there's 2 knots, and then on to the last one, and then we can cut it off. So you simply slip the needle through underneath. Pass it, pull it nice and tight. Okay, you now have 3 super tight knots tied on these guys. It's not going anywhere. Just for the sake of overkill, I like to take it one further. So the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to bury the needle in from one of these little valleys, going straight through at an angle as far down as we can get it. So I'm running diagonally through the different lays of the rope. And then what you do is you pull it really tight. It's going to compress. So now the tail of it's running through this rope here. So you pull it really tight, and then you snip it off flush. And then when the rope relaxes, that little line disappears into it. So now you have the whipping. It's all nice and tight. Then you have these knots in the valleys of the lays. They're nice and tight, and they're held together by the lays. And then lastly, the tail of it all is then zigzagged through this length of rope. In order for it to come unraveled, that line first has to work its way out of here, then untie these knots, then untie this section of the whipping, and then start unraveling. So, as you can see, this is a very, very foolproof and durable way to terminate your line. So, this works great. The advantage of whipping over back splicing is you don't lose any length of line. When you do a back splice, you're going to lose about a foot per line, because if your back splice is about 6 inches, it takes about 6 inches of line to do that back splice. So, you're going to lose about a foot on each line that you work with. So if you need a 50-foot line and then you do back splices, you're going to have a back spliced 49-foot line, which is now going to be short. Or if you do whipping, you're still going to have that same 50-foot line that you started with. So that's the huge advantage of this. Now, yes, it's a lot more time consuming than simply melting these ends, but now you have nice fuzzy ends, which won't chafe your boat and won't hurt anything. I hope you guys found that video helpful, and if you have any questions about lines or any work with lines, please let us know in the comments down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe this video, it really helps the channel.